Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Kiran ma'am. Am I audible to you?
Good evening, Bhavit. Yes, you are audible to me.
Your voice is a bit low, ma'am, so you can raise it up.
Um, yeah, am I fine now?
Yeah, now it's fine.
Okay.
So, shall we start the class?
Yeah, we can start.
Yeah, so I'll introduce you. So, we have today's webinar. We have three doctors, and they will join later on. So, today, half an hour session will be divided given to one doctor, and the topic of the workshop is field of clinical practice and the steps in BNYs to approach in our career. So we have three doctors. We will start with the first doctor, Dr. Kiran Hendre. She is completed BNYS from SVSA and completed Master in Public Health and working as a COVID-19 response team in the Pune government. As we can all say, this is the first doctor in BNYS I can see, as from my perspective, who is working in the COVID sector. So I congratulate and I wish you'll be healthy. So from this introduction, I'll tell you to start the session or we can proceed with already 65 parts. Yes.
Okay. Thanks,
Thank you.
Bhavit. Thank you so much. And I know Bhavit very well. Few of the things he's lying. I'm not that great, okay? Anyway, so Bhavit, how is it working? Like, am I the host and I can
No,
share
you
the
are the
screen?
co-host, so you can continue the session. I will admit I'll do everything. If someone is disturbing in between, so I'll take care of it.
Okay, so I will I would want to recheck my voice. Is it fine?
So everyone can tell me your voice is distorted when your voice is low. So once
Yeah. Please, please.
you
So I think
text in
everybody.
chat, I'll be reading the chat, so everyone can text in chat your
Okay.
questions.
So everybody is unmute, and I feel if video or audio anything is stuck, unmute yourself and notify us. So everybody is mute. I'm sorry. So I would share this screen and okay. Is it seen?
Your voice is low, man. Everyone is.
Hello.
Yeah,
Is it fine now?
yeah. To me, it's fine. I do not know about others. They can increase their volume once. They can check their mics.
Hello.
Yes, it's clear, but it's low. It's clear, but it's low. Right.
Is it clear?
Yeah, clear. Voice is clear.
So, okay, I will try to talk loud. That is the solution. Yes, Bhavit, I'm not able to share the screen. I guess it is saying host disabled participants screen sharing.
Okay, I'll make you host then. Wait a second.
Yeah. That will be better.
Now,
Yeah, yeah. Now it's happening. Yes. So before I share the screen and start something like PPT, I would like to tell you something. So the topic given to me and suggested by Bhavit is learning perspectives as a doctor or researcher. So that's a very interesting topic, Bhavit. Thank you so much. I was very confused how much to include into this and what not to include. I was very choosy about giving the session in just stipulated period of time. So here we go. Okay. Learning perspectives as a doctor or and researcher. So myself, Kiran, as Bhavit introduced, I'm BNYS, MSc and MPH. What I did first is, okay, what I did first is this. I did first is this. I searched on Google. I literally searched learning perspectives as a doctor on Google, and you cannot believe it's it showed 27 billion results in kind of less than 1 second. And that's what I think that makes a very good point here, that the result showed a very meaningful statements that how an intern became doctor, how an intern became adjusted, how an intern adjusted to become a doctor. So managing with long days, administrative and clinical works, then interruptions during their working hours, and time pressures, identifying priorities, dealing with criticism without compromising key relationships, communicate succinctly, understanding team roles, negotiating conflict, and etc. So the point I want to make here is, first step of learning is addressing dearth of information. Okay, so there are various ways of getting information, and what comes here, Patanjali, Pramana. So that's what come here. Uh, do you remember the sutra of Patanjali that talks about Pramana in terms of Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama, Pramana? So that means, how do you seek right knowledge? How do you learn about something which is right? Yeah. So first thing I would want everybody to know is search engine. You should never fall out of information. You should never fall out of dearth of information or lack of information. And that becomes a very good source of information. So first thing I would want everybody to know about search engines is Google Scholar is a search engine, but yes, of course, that remains a secret between us, that we search in Google Scholar and tell that to people. But Google Scholar is not something which you can refer, officially. You cannot mention it officially that as a reference search engine for your any kind of information. Of course, there are various others like PubMed, Scopus, Embase, Web of Science, EBSCO. Of course, last two, Web of Science and EBSCO, are paid. Others, PubMed, Scopus, and Embase, you will have to learn how to search, what are the keywords that you should search with, and other things. Yeah. So being a doctor, how much you should search? Okay. To what extent you should search? That's important. So good enough to convince your patient. That is first thing. And as a researcher, to what extent you should search is until you get your next query. So I would want everybody to look at yourself from the lens of doctor as well as from the lens of researcher, because researcher is not a different profession. It comes it comes with any other profession, may that be doctor, may that be
Second,
anything, may that be student, may that
Kiran
be
ma'am, sorry.
yes, yes.
There is your low volume through your headphones, so everyone is requesting you to speak loud. That is coming.
Oh, okay. So I would take off my headphones if that is fine. Am I audible to you now?
Now it's clear. Yeah, now it's
Okay.
clear. Everyone can tell in chat box now.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you can continue now.
Okay then. So researcher until you get your next query. So research is not a separate profession as such. You find researcher within you with other professions. So you might be doctor, you might be anything, maybe student, you might be an engineer, but researcher is a quality that exists within you. Okay, one second. And that's where it becomes a never ending process, and that's where you keep on searching. The other thing I would like to explain with these points is hints. So what are the hints that you can search on and you can cling on for your knowledge? And what I experience in my day to day life, what I search in my during my academics or during my working hours, is laws of quantum physics. Okay, you might find that I'm switching from the fields, but it is not so. Okay, everything in nature can be physics, can be mathematics, can be chemistry, but everything cannot be biology, as you know, but it can only be understood by biology. So I would like you to different fields of science. So laws of physics sounds very interesting to me. And if I want to generate curiosity within you about this topic, I would like to mention about participatory universe. Okay, so you being an observer play a very important role in laws of nature or in receiving or perceiving the nature. So that becomes the science of yoga as well, science of consciousness. So you being conscious about something changes that thing, and that is the law of quantum physics as well. I mean, one of the laws of quantum physics, that even a smallest particle unit of this creation, that is an electron, knows if you are conscious about it. And that's how quantum healing works. So I would like to tell you all that laws of quantum physics are nothing other than laws of your day-to-day life, consciousness, and yoga. And you can always correlate them with your medical science. Then second thing is rereading your yogic scriptures. Yes. So when I was in my internship last year of my academics, I was very much fascinated with allopathy. I was very much fascinated with pharmacology and how that works and all this molecular mechanism. And I totally forgot to, give a rereading or reapproaching yogic scriptures, which was very, very important, and which is actually important because these scriptures are not just like that written. They are written with lots of realization. So to generate curiosity again, I would recommend you to go through Swara Yoga, and that is my field of research as such. So I had a project Swara Yoga, and I found it very fascinating. It talks about your brain, it talks about the laws of laterality, it talks about, the nostrils, nasal cycle, how your nose changes its shape from within for every couple of minutes. So it is amazing. It is mysterious, and yes, you can challenge me, you can correlate it, of course, with any modern scientific law, you can correlate this yogic scriptures. Then then comes a very secret thing which may remain within you and me and not going out, or maybe you can share it with your BNYS fellows. Read books of other medicinal systems like Ayurveda. So Ashtang, to start with Ashtanga Hridaya, Sushruta Samhita, Charak Samhita, these books are amazing. You guys should go through these books. Okay, to start with Ashtanga Hridaya, it is very nice book. You can you can see types of personalities. You can see, to again generate a curiosity, I would say, in Ashtanga Hridaya, even the pills are categorized into different types of personalities, types of elements. If you take a sweet taste, it says it becomes earth and water element, and that's why people with obesity, which is again a disease of earth and water element, should not consume sweet food. Okay, so that's how you can correlate a traditional science, and that is, science of Ayurveda. It doesn't become Ayurvedic science completely. So that is a holistic science, and that you can correlate it with your, clinical practice, and that's how you can learn it as a doctor. Okay. So next thing I would want you all to know is an art of observing. So art of observing is, first step is self-observation. Observe yourself. Okay. So you can observe your own habits, you can observe your own body type, observing your own facial features, your own hair texture, skin type, patterns, habits, health issues. everything that you have, start from yourself. Okay, observe your each and every movement, then starts with observing others. Okay, it may look like you're staring somebody, but it's okay. Okay, observing your family, observing your friends, relatives. You can ask, you can tell them that I am observing, hey, I'm observing you. Okay, observe their body type. Are they lean, thin, or they are fat, and what is their body morphology? Is it moderate, is it fat, is it very lean? And then their health issues regarding to it, and try categorizing people into this. Okay, observe all lean people, ask them the questions about their health issues. Okay, observe all people with moderate morphology, ask them the questions about their disease history or anything like that. Okay, so observing people, observing yourself, categorizing, stereotyping them, and then coming to the point of traditional science, that learning different types of personalities: earth, water, fire, of course, air, and then there is akasha, that is space personality, which amalgamates with all other four. So there are basically four types of personalities, and then amalgamation or combination of these four, they become more and more. In Ayurveda, it is categorized into seven personalities. And yes, being a naturopathy doctor, you all have the knowledge about these elements, and you can actually go through the properties of these elements through Ayurvedic texts or through various other books, and then start categorizing people. And do it right from today. Make it as a habit to observe people and try categorizing them. But yes, try not to be judgmental because it will affect your social image. Okay, so there are a few hints again. Observing nasal cycle. That's my favorite thing. So I have given few hints in order to start something. Okay, how can you start that particular thing? I've given you the hints. So observing your nasal cycle. That's the favorite job I have. So when you sleep, what is your nasal cycle? Which nostril is dominant? When you eat, which nostril is dominant? When you take shower, which nostril is dominant? Okay, when you drink coffee, which nostril is dominant? And these things, the nostrils, dominance, and their patterns are given in Swar Yoga. Trust me, they are so amazing and so mysterious that you will never end knowing them. You will never end searching about them. It generates so much of curiosity. Okay, then uh, then other important thing is categorizing personality, as I told, and try recognizing their habits and issues. Also, third thing is observing your thoughts. So, observe your thoughts while taking 4 shower, or while you're riding a bike, or getting up at 3 a.m. Observe yourself. That adds on to your learning perspective as a researcher. Definitely, once your researcher is awake, um, you can definitely become a very good doctor, very good clinician. Then the third point is art of experiencing. Okay, so this becomes a plus point for you, I guess, because I cannot tell an allopathic doctor to experience various types of medications that he prescribes to people. Of course not. He cannot take some antibiotic for to experience how it feels when I have some bacterial infection. But yes, being a naturopathy doctor, you can experience both good and bad lifestyle. Sorry, for good I've written God. So it's good and bad lifestyles. Both you can experience, right? Try experiencing, try having junk food and all that shit for a month and feel how it, and see how it feels. How do you grow? How the fat grows? How much of efforts it takes to reduce the fat, to reduce body weight, and to get back to normalcy. Yes, you can do it. Yeah. And observe when you are into a good lifestyle, what are the changes in you? Experience effects of different yoga techniques and naturopathy treatments. Yes, again. So, very nice experiences with, for example, Kapalbhati Kriya, you can experience Keval Kumbhaka. Okay, so these experiences will help you convincing patients that how does it work. So how Kapalbhati Kriya works for people with mental ailments. Okay, how naturopathy treatment, let's say cold infusion or cold shower or cold circular jet helps in people with anxiety, depression. How does it help with mental ailments? Okay, because when you are experiencing that particular thing, you will be a good teacher to explain that thing to others, to your patients, and also to the people. Then experience challenges, of course, better than risks. So if you have patients in your clinics, or if you are dealing with somebody who is cannot take risks, right? You stop medicines and I'll give you some naturopathy treatment. You can always take a challenge that yes, I will reduce the dosage or I will terminate the medication that you are taking, but with slowly and day by day we will get better. With few little bit of safer side always you should have. So practice your medicine with safety, and also you should take challenges simultaneously, and that's how you will learn and you will grow as a clinician or a physician in your life. Okay, and learn technology. Okay, so that's the other thing I would like you all to do. Yes. So again, hence, so experience acupuncture. Art of experiencing. I would want you all to experience acupuncture. Yes. Any mild ailments, anything which you have, may that be delayed periods for 2 3 days, or may that be a small issue of constipation, anything, experience acupuncture. That's only objectifying treatment you have. You know that you cannot tell somebody to go for hydrotherapy to get acute for an acute ailment, to treat acute ailment. No, you cannot tell somebody to go for such risky treatments which you cannot guarantee. But yes, you can go for acupuncture. Okay, so acupuncture is it's a tool that you have in emergency. If you forget about everything else, relearn acupuncture. Try recalling meridians. If not meridians, try recalling the points which are important for disease. Okay. So, and the first thing is you should try it on yourself. Feel how it feels. Okay. Then experience, as I said, Keval Kumbhaka is just an example because I wanted to include mental health also, and pranayama being a very important technique in yoga to deal with your mental health. I have included an example of it. Then, next step is try designing your website. Guys, you should know how to design your own website. So Wix.com is very simple portal that you have to design your website. I would want you to go after the session to Wix.com and see how to design your own website. It also offers your own apps. So go for it. Okay, because if you have your own portal, you can write it down in your CV, and that adds on to so much of that, gives you so much of credit. Okay, so try designing your own website. This is the now it is turning completely techno world. Now we are entering into techno world. You should know this. then then last thing I would want to talk about is translational science. It would take not more than 2 minutes. So translational science is correlating traditional with modern science. So maybe, as I told you in my second line, about type of personality with genotype. Okay. So if you find somebody that you can categorize or stereotype in certain kind of personality, try identifying genotype of it once again. Okay, try identifying genotype of it. Try correlating the traditional science with modern science. The second example I would like to give it again because it's my field of research. Chronobiology is what I research on. So Swara Yoga, that is the science of laterality, yogic science of laterality with chronobiology. Chronobiology is again the biology of time. Okay, so how time plays an important role in regulating your body, in regulating your secretions, hormonal secretions, or cycles of body, and everything. So Swara Yoga is again a science of a yogic science of laterality, and chronobiology is a modern science, which is again a translational science of Swara. Then different streams of sciences. Yes, of course. As I everything can be physics, everything can be chemistry, everything can be mathematics. The only one stream of science which can understand all three is biology. So you should try correlating different streams of science. Physics with your science, physics with naturopathy, physics with yoga, maybe mathematics you can take, chemistry, and this is my favorite thing, quantum physics with yoga. That's the most, I mean, the hottest topic, and it's very interesting for me. Even you can go for it, and I'm sure you will learn a lot from this. Okay, thank you guys. Thanks for listening to me. I think I'll exit and I'll come back to.
Anyone has any questions or any questions after this conference?
Yeah. So is that all right to you? Any questions? I'll check the chat box. Okay, was I audible to you all? I mean,
Yeah, it's audible. It's clear. Yeah.
maybe with few comments there in chat box. Thank you
Any
all.
questions? Just 2 minutes.
I hope it was helpful. Any questions? Any
Yeah,
questions?
yeah, it came in chat box. First question from Kajal Sharma. Please
Yes,
explain
Kajal.
about
And
chronobiology.
okay, chronobiology. Chrono. So we will split it. Chrono is time. Biology is biology. So biology of time is chronobiology. So when you get up, so sleep and wake cycle, eating and satiety cycle. You have REM and non-REM cycle during sleep. So this all comes in chronobiology. You have cycle of your hormonal secretion. Morning you secrete more of steroids. Evening you secrete less of steroids. So that again, your every organ has a clock, and that is chronobiology. Biology of clock, biological clock is chronobiology. Yeah.
Next question from Namita Desai. Can
Can
you
you
tell
share
the
the concept of
concept of
quantum physics relating to
yeah.
yoga? What exactly it is? Okay, sure. Why not? I would love to tell this. So, quantum physics, one of the laws of quantum physics is electron, a small particle. Okay, when something which you can see is matter. Okay, something which you cannot see, but you can see impression of it is wave. So it says an electron can be a matter or can be a wave, but it determines to be a matter or wave depending over somebody is observing it or not. So your consciousness, if the quantum I mean the studies of quantum physics, the physicists who studied quantum physics did this experiment that they fixed a camera and they were looking from camera to an electron, and they found the electron is behaving differently when they are looking at it, and they found that electron is behaving differently when they are not looking at it. So definitely an electron is conscious about our consciousness. So this science is again a part of your science of consciousness. Okay. So this way you can also correlate it with yoga when you say, observe your body, observe, feel that your heart is beating nicely, and then there is, heat is pumping blood all throughout your body. So that works. How that works and how you can put it in science, how you can make it evidence based is with quantum physics. And that is an example that I have given. But yes, there are many other laws of quantum physics: electron entanglement. Okay, so electron tunneling. There are many laws you can correlate. Okay, then can you explain type of personality with genotype? Yes, of course. So if you see, a personality, for example, air personality, okay? And if you find that person a very lean, I'm taking an example, very lean, very thin, having a different skin texture, maybe very dry skin texture, and and you can guess that he may have problem with his breathing. So if you ask him, if you recognize that person as an asthmatic or problem with breathing, definitely you can correlate his genotype that he might have higher secretion of histamine, or he might have higher inflammatory I mean inflammatory pharmacologically important cytokines which are secreted. So these are the genotypes which are very, very at the molecular level, very, very basic level to the personality type of his. Okay, so air personality, having asthma, what is the gene of it? Okay, like that. Apart from different types of yoga, why swara yoga fascinated you that much? I think that becomes a very that is an interesting question, and I would explain whole of my journey into chronobiology. So I had one question, that why such simple pranayama like anulom vilom pranayama is given lots of importance in hatha yoga, in Patanjali Yoga Sutra? Why there is this nostril lateral specificity important? So that generated a curiosity to me, that why nostril specificity. And I went into Swara Yoga, which talks about many other theories, correlating your right nostril and activities of it, left nostril and activities of it. And that is amazing. That is amazing. It talks right from giving a birth to male child or female child, which nostril should be on, which nostril should be off. Right from that it talks. Of course, that is not something which should be shared with common people. This is a professional platform, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you so much. I think that was my time given by Bhavit. Thank you, Bhavit.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much,
much.
ma'am. The hints which we get from your PPTs, I think it's very useful for all of us. So very good. Be fine. And
Yeah,
if
I will share my PPT, and I'll also give you all my email ID. Maybe I can type it here.
in chat box,
You can, yeah. So you can mail me if you have any questions, any queries. You can mail me, or you can maybe directly message on this number. Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
thank you so much for this wonderful session. We are looking for it. So now, if you want to continue, or if you have some work, you can continue, or you can leave the session. We'll have now next Dr. Naveen. So I'll make him co-host, and we'll continue the meeting. Okay,
Okay,
thank
sure.
you so much. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Yes, Dr. Naveen, sir, you can unmute.
Hello,
Good evening, sir.
good evening.
Good evening, sir. I'll introduce to our participants Dr. Naveen Sharma, who is BNYS from SDM, MSc and PGD TN. And he is currently working in the naturopathic counselor at Yo1 Wellness USA and former chief medical officer at Balaji Niropadam Delhi, having the 15 years of clinical experience. Thank you so much, sir, for coming in this virtual platform with all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Babit, for inviting me for this wonderful opportunity.
So we can start the session. We are 5 minutes late. Sorry for that, but we can start the session.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's fine. It's absolutely fine.
It's different timings for you, sir. It's 9 hours different. So that's
Yeah, my morning 8 a.m. That's fine.
thank you so much, sir, for cooperating with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome. Almost. So, hi everyone. Uh, I have invited for the topic how to grow as a clinician and uh, what should be your approach being a clinical practitioner. So my experience says that one should always focus on physiological based, because all naturopathy treatments are based on the physiological effect. If your physiology is strong, if you know the normal physiology of the organ or body, you can treat the patient in better way. One thing. The second thing is you need to have a patience to listen the patient properly. Third thing I would say, when we start the practice in the beginning, we always believe that know, we know that we know everything. So I would say first your strong should be like physiology should be very strong enough to understand.
So you can continue the session. I'll admit the doctor. You can continue the session.
Hello.
So you can continue the session, sir.
Okay. Okay. So first is the physiology. Then you should know the pathophysiology of the disease. Then you must correlate your treatments with your physiological effects. That's very, very important. Then comes to the practice. When you start the practice and we have any right where we fail, where generally the clinical practitioners or doctors fail, where the area where we fail actually. When you write the treatment for the patients and you just send off them for the treatment, and when you don't supervise the treatment, there basically our treatments fails, because the therapist which we are giving the treatments, they don't know the exact the procedure, the right way, and the importance of the temperature of any treatments, or the maybe the direction of the massage. So initially it's very, very important to uh, observe and visit the guest when the treatment is going on. So if you do that, you can guide your therapist in better way and get the maximum benefit of the treatments. The other thing which I see in our graduates and when we come out of the college, so they basically they when they come out of the college, they do not practice, or they don't stick to our basic principles, or they could not correlate the scientific basis of the basic principle of naturopathy. The most of the practice who is practicing in the clinical nowadays, maximum follows the Ayurveda principles. They start giving the herbs, they start giving uh, different kind of herbs which generally the Ayurveda people uses, or they start practicing the Ayurveda practices like Nadi Parikshan or something like that. So those things, I believe that that's against our system. If you are very, you should have a faith in your system first. You should be convinced with your philosophy and principles. That's how you can grow in your clinical practice. And the clinical practice is always is based on your belief and principle. If you yourself does not have a trust or faith in your system, how you can convince your patient, or how can you convince your guest to follow yourself? So you need to give them the convincing, basically convincing thoughts to follow yourself. You need to explain them exactly what happens in which condition and how you can treat them and what will be the benefit of it. Generally, what happens, we start focusing on the, like in the allopathy the people follow, pill for every pill. We start giving the treatments like basically on the symptomatic basis. This is required. Symptomatic based treatment is required, but you need to explain them exactly what they should follow when they go back home. And continuous follow-up is very, very required. If you don't follow after they leave you, you'll not be able to success in your aim. So my belief and my trust is that if I follow my guests or patients, they always return to me. Why? Because I'm keep them following and I'm keep them guiding on the continuous basis. So that's a very, very important thing to grow as a clinician or practitioner. Other thing is like you need to be very updated on the day-to-day basis. Like nowadays in the Western countries, the intermittent fasting is on boom. Everybody wants to know about the intermittent fasting. Everybody wants to talk about the intermittent fasting. So like for us, intermittent fasting is not new. We are reading since long time, we are studying, and we know in Indian cultures, the intermittent fasting was always is supported by the facts and the and even the Vedas. So here the people, when they do intermittent fasting, what they say, and we also sometimes our graduates also believes that 16-8, like as example, like they say 16-8 hour fasting. So they eat 8 hours window and they fast for the 16 hours. But exactly, if you know that the 16-hour fast, actually we are doing only the 4 or 5 hours fasting in the 16 hours basis. As we all know, according to the physiology or the things, when you finish your last meal by 7 o'clock, so morning 7, you will be in the metabolic phase, not in the fasting phase. Fasting will start from morning 7 a.m. to 12 noon. So that's basically 5 hour fasting only we did it. So we need to explain these facts to the guests or patients. Other thing I would say, the most important thing is that while study the biochemistry and the physiology, two tools, you must be very thorough with it. Suppose like if I ask like, or say, what is the right way to have carrot in your salad? How you can improve the absorption of vitamin A in your body? Very, 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 very small thing, but we all miss this when we suggest to the guest. As we all know, vitamin A is a fat soluble vitamin, right? So when you eat this, you need a fat with it. If you eat one just few drops of oil or ghee or butter in it, you can maximize the absorption of vitamin A in your body. The same way, the sprouts, when we eat, we say you get all vitamin, and vitamin E is rich in sprouts. Again, if you eat just right like that, maybe vitamin E absorption will not be much sufficient. So you need to add the oil or the ghee or butter on it. So improvise or maximize the absorption of vitamin E. So these very small things, like especially I would say the nutrition part, the vitamin and minerals part, we should be very thorough with it. The deficiencies and the sources and how it can be absorbed. And another thing I would say, we should know the drug interaction between the nutritions. What drug hamper the nutrition absorptions? Which nutrition? So if you know the drug interaction between the nutrition and the drug, then you'll be better. You'll be able to explain the guest or patient better way. This thing is very, very important when you practice clinically. You should be very, very updated with the medicines which are coming in the market. You should be knowing their side effects. You should be knowing the effects and side effects both. So you should be able to explain the guest or patient what is the side effect of those medicine which you're taking it, and how you're going to wean off them or trap them, and how you can prevent those side effects. So we should be knowing the medicines, the benefits and side effects, but we should not be prescribing them. And another thing is like in the clinical practice, I've seen that always like whatever junior worked with me, I saw they always just write just like that. They write some treatment which whatever they learn in their internship. They write the hip bath or just massage or impact just to give them the treatment. No, you should correlate your symptoms, your disease, and what you want to achieve. You should be very clear about it. What you want to achieve in your treatment, what you're going to achieve. Other thing I would say, the physiology of water we must be knowing while prescribing the therapies. What if you give the cold, what will happen, what could be the reaction, and what would be the end results. And if you're giving the hot, you should be aware of it. So we generally miss this thing in the clinical practices. We just like that, right? Okay, jacuzzi bath, but you don't know the temperature, what temperature you're going to prescribe it, at what temperature you want to give it. So your therapist must have the water thermometer. You should write the temperature of the water, what you want to give them. Then you can achieve the right or exact benefit or results in your therapy. And you will not believe that it is very, very effective. I have practiced in my clinical practice since beginning I started, and I think that was the reason my practice, and I am stick to my clinical practice. There's a lot of areas are there where you can go, but it is important before you entering into the practical practice or the practical world, you must decide what you want to do it in your life. You want to practice as a clinician is very, very tough and very struggling. But if you have a faith, you can proceed. You can success in your life. If you have a doubt as a clinician, you want to clinician or not, then it's very tough. So you need to be clear before you start any practice. Even sometimes people say when you practice in the resorts or wellness center, you cannot practice as like clinician. But I believe that no, this is not true. You can be as a clinician when you're practicing in the resort also. So that's you how you can guide or how you can convince your guest to become your patient or your guest for forever. That's depend on you all. So here I will end, and if you have any questions, please go ahead. So I'll be more comfortable if you're asking a question.
So anyone can unmute themselves and ask questions. Vidyaram is having question. You can ask, unmute Vidyaram, Deepika, anyone.
Because guys, I'm not very frequent speaker, and so I don't know.
No, sir, it was
So
very good.
so many people stand.
So anyone is there, so who would like to ask question from the side?
How many of you want to be a clinician?
Yeah, that you can write in chat box also. Yes or no, you can write. Yes, they are responding, sir. Yes, sir. Want to, but they do not have any question.
And how many of you want to be researcher? So I can see here like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
They have raised the hand, so if they want to ask questions, they can unmute themselves and they can ask. We have 5 more minutes. The next speaker is waiting for us. So if anyone has any question, please unmute.
So, I'll start the good. So, Brajesh Kumar Mishra is want to be clinician. Good. So, good. Any questions, Brajesh?
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Brajesh.
इसकी वजह से वो आपने स्प्राउट्स वाली जो बात कही थी कि वो विटामिन ए जो फैट सॉल्युबल विटामिन हैं उन्हें नीड होती है फैट की एब्जॉर्ब होने के लिए,
जी
तो मेटाबोलाइज होने के लिए एक्चुअली। तो सर उससे एडिशनल में हम मतलब उसको मेटाबोलाइज करने के लिए फैट अलग से फैट लेना जो आपने बताया वो, और हमारे बॉडी में ऑलरेडी जो फैट मतलब अवेलेबल होते हैं उससे वो कंज्यूम करना, वो दोनों चीज डिफरेंट है या सेम ही है?
नहीं, वो साथ में, उसके साथ में जब आप लेंगे तब वो मेटाबोलाइज बेटर होगा। बॉडी के फैट्स हैं, दैट्स फाइन, बट टू एब्जॉर्प्शन बेसिकली आपके कहाँ से होता है, उस लेवल पे होना जरूरी है।
ओके सर।
क्या
So one more question was there, which is
नेहा,
better, a researcher or a clinician? From Kriti Mishra.
Bhavit, I'm not able to hear you.
Sir, which is better, a researcher or clinician? From
See,
Kriti Mishra.
both has its own benefits, and because being a both, it's very good. But what happens, what is like, this is my personal opinion about it. The researchers cannot be a good clinician, but yeah, clinician can be a good researcher. Hello. So if
Yes.
somebody wants to like going for the both, I would say start a practice of clinician, then go for the research. That's much better approach, I would say.
Sir,
Because
one more question.
once you are in the research, you are more of theoretical, and that practice basically in the practically, there's sometimes I don't know, it may be I might be wrong, but they're not able to introduce or implement all the things into the practice. Yes.
Yes, sir. Can I ask?
Yes, please. Just tell your name.
So myself, Brijesh Kumar Mishra.
Yeah, Brijesh.
Sir, I want to ask, as a clinician, after the completing the course of BNYS, ऐसे कौन सी challenges आती हैं बाद में जो face करना होता है और हमारे लिए important होता है जो हमें अभी से notice करना हो as a clinician after?
सबसे बड़ी जो प्रॉब्लम आएगी आपके साथ, जो आती है बेसिकली लोगों के साथ में, जब आप अपने चैम्बर में बैठते हैं, तो पहला चैलेंज होता है कि इतने लोग आपके पास आते हैं ट्रीटमेंट के लिए, उनमें से दे ऑल आर नॉट लुकिंग फॉर एज अ ट्रीटमेंट, राइट? कुछ लोग नेचुरोपैथी सेंटर में केवल मौज मस्ती के लिए आते हैं, कुछ लोग जस्ट सिंपल वेलबीइंग और वेलनेस के लिए आते हैं, उसमें से कुछ लोग ट्रीटमेंट के लिए आते हैं. सो आउट ऑफ 100 you say only the 10% people will be looking for the treatments and 90% people will be looking for just, but they have still they have issues, health issues. You need to come into your naturopathy treatments or as a patients, or yes, things like they should convert into your system, right? So ये सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज होता है. दूसरा जो चैलेंज आजकल मैं देखता हूँ वो ये है कि जब हम चैम्बर में बैठते हैं तो हम समझते हैं कि वी आर बिग डॉक्टर्स, you need to understand the mental status of the patient. Accordingly, we have to treat them, because until unless you reach to the mental status, what the people is happy or not, जो भी आपके पास आ रहा है वो खुश है नहीं है अंदर से, वो समझने के लिए आपको उसको ऑब्जर्व करना पड़ता है. बहुत कीन ऑब्जर्वेशन चाहिए आपको. अगर आपने उस पॉइंट पर मिस कर दिया तो आपका ट्रीटमेंट कोई भी काम नहीं है. यू विल नॉट एबल टू गिव एनी काइंड ऑफ बेनिफिट्स टू द पेशेंट्स if they are not treated at the mental level or their mind status. तो ये बहुत जरूरी है ये समझना कि जो पेशेंट आ रहा है आपके पास उसकी प्रॉब्लम केवल जस्ट फिजिकल है या फिर ये रिलेट टू द साइकोलॉजी है, क्योंकि नेचुरोपैथी ट्रीटमेंट्स वर्क्स एट द ऑल लेवल. So you need
Yes.
to address each and everything. If you're just treating as a symptom wise, just like what, okay, diabetes hai, okay, I'm treating diabetes. So you'll not be able to address the complete issues. So you need to understand each and everything. You have to watch patient very carefully since he or she start walking in your cabin, and every day. So you need to meet every day, at least twice a day, sometimes to the guest.
Hmm.
Is it clear, Brajesh?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So next question is from Garima Garg. So what if herbal medicine working well with the patient condition?
1 minute, I'm not able to hear properly.
Yes, sir. So you can read the chat box if you can, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Last question from the Garima Garg.
Yes. So, what herbal medicine, right, Garima?
Yes, sir.
Herbal medicine is working well with the patient condition. Okay. So, what kind of herbal medicine you looking like? See, in our naturopathy syllabus, we generally read about kitchen herbs, right? So, I would prefer if you use the kitchen herbs, it's okay, fine. But if you are using like ashwagandha or giloy or gudichi or something like that, they are all completely Ayurveda herbs, Ayurvedic medicines. And I believe that we are not good enough in their, the benefits and their characteristics and in which condition we should use it. Generally, what happens, we just see on the net or we start just prescribing them, because we don't have the exact knowledge of Vata, Pitta and Kapha and the Prakriti and Vikriti and which condition we supposed to give them the combinations. So I believe that if you just use the kitchen herbs is okay, that's perfectly fine, but not other medicines.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
That's my personal opinion.
Okay, sir. And last question from Bhumika Acharya, sir.
Yeah, Bhumika. So, hi, Bhumika.
Good evening, sir. Like, or is it
Yeah.
based on your experience, which method of diagnosis is best, or is it better to combine both yogic and naturopathic diagnostic method?
You have to combine all the method of diagnosis, whatever you know about it. Like you use the medicine, you use the yogic and naturopathy diagnosis, you use the tool of modern medicines also. So you should get the right conclusion of the disease, because you need to understand the correlation between both. You need to correlate the naturopathic diagnosis with the modern diagnosis. Then only you get the best results or best diagnosis. So you'll be able to explain to your patient what modern medicine says and what naturopathy says and how it is correlated with each other. Like I will give you the example when I generally talk about the 5 elements theory. Suppose if I'm talking about the ascites, okay? So ascites is like diagnosed by a physical examination, but when you correlate with your naturopathy things, what it is the excess of water in the body, right? So excess water comes from where? It comes from the earth element, right? The water comes from the earth. So you need to correlate the earth elements. So what are the earth element organ is there in the body? It may be something wrong with the earth element somewhere. So maybe a liver maybe a heart. Heart is a earth and the water combination, right? Or maybe kidney. So these are the organs which basically causes the ascites, right? So basically in that, out of it, what you see, okay, liver is a closest organ to cause the ascites in your stomach. So you need to correlate your naturopathic diagnosis or naturopathic principles to your modern diagnosis. Then you'll get the good understanding of it. I hope it's clear to you, Bhumika.
She told just simply sticking to the soul of naturopathy principle.
The combination is always good here. It's always combination is good.
Thank you so much, sir, for this the wonderful session we have for half an hour just because of the timings issues.
So last question is from again is Garima's, better to go in the integrative management if we enough knowledge and understanding of it. So I don't think, because I believe in my system. I'm very, very particular about naturopathy and yoga system. See, if it always says people are basically is diverting of themselves to the different system, why you want to capture the other system? That's why, see, what is the problem with us? We are annoyed by when the Ayurveda people start doing yoga, or they start claiming I'm a yoga, or and the yoga belongs to the Ayurveda, right? So if you have 100% faith in your system, that your system is very powerful, and you don't need to take any support from any other system, I would say. But yeah, working with all the systems together, but you're practicing your own system is always good. You can have in your clinic Ayurveda, you can have in your clinic homeopathy, you can have in your clinic the modern medicine, but you should be practicing your own system, only your own system, not everybody's system. Try to put your all the nose in all the systems. No, that's not good at all. I think this is my belief personally. That's I growed in my clinical practice.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bhavit. I'm not very
No problem, sir. It was a very wonderful session, sir. It was a very wonderful session.
thank you everyone to listening me. And I'm very I'm stage fearing person. I never go to the stage and talk. It's very difficult for me to discuss. Yes, anything else? Anybody?
And thank you so much, sir, for the session.
Thank you everyone. Thank you to listening me in this 30 minutes. I think I'm crossed my time.
No, sir, it's okay, sir. So,
Thank you so much, Bhavit. Thank you everyone.
thank you so much, sir.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Bye.
Good evening, Sami sir. So, it's surprise talk for everyone who 70 participants are here in the session. I'll introduce you, sir, first. So, Dr. Raghavendra Swami, sir, he completed his BNYS and PhD and currently working as Assistant Medical Officer, Yoga and Naturopathic Lifestyle Clinic in Government Hospital, Tamil Nadu. So, good evening, sir, and welcome you, sir, in the virtual platform with all of our student community.
Good evening, Bhavit. So, thanks for organizing this wonderful session. So, I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, sir, it's all.
Yeah. So, thanks for organizing this wonderful session with all freshers and postgraduate students and doctors as well. And good evening, everyone. And this is kind of this past 2 months have been a kind of filled with packed with webinars and so much of information being transferred. And I think we as BNY's community, naturopathy and yoga community, have been doing pretty well in knowledge transfer. And I would like to thank so many people who have been taking this as an opportunity to teach whatever they know, and thanks to the learners also for taking so much of interest in using their time for enriching their knowledge and experience. So today I have been asked to speak about the future of BNYs in rehabilitation and mental health sector. So I will not be using any slides. I'm just trying to speak my mind out here. So we as BNY's graduates, we are in a very distinguished and a unique position when we are speaking about the healthcare industry completely, because we are the system of medicine where we can be integrated very efficiently, effectively, and seamlessly into literally any system of medicine. So which is why many other systems of people want to encroach upon us, and they want to have us as a part of them. So there are very many reasons that people give, but there is no need for us to kind of feel worried when somebody is encroaching upon our system, especially with respect to yoga or hydrotherapy or even acupuncture for that matter. Because if somebody is taking something from us, it simply means that we are doing or we are performing very good, right? So only thing that we can do as of now is like strengthen our knowledge, strengthen the wisdom base that we have, and implement it as effectively and as efficiently as possible. So why are we unique? As I said, we are the best integratable system with any system of medicine, and we do not have any risk, less risky rather. We do not have any kind of side effects. Mostly, we can be safely administered, efficiently integrated. So this makes us position ourselves in a very unique place wherein we can reach to wide or serve a wide spectrum of people, basically. So how do we need to strengthen our practices? General, just clinically, I will speak as a general clinical practice, then I will switch over to the mental health sector. So the uniqueness of our practice is the diagnostic strategies that we have. Unfortunately, in our country, iris diagnosis is very less appreciated, but this has been something which has been close to my heart when I was a faculty at SVSR. And Bhavit, along with the many other students, have in fact conducted good amount of research studies on iris diagnosis, and they've all been promising. I'll take some time to explain about iris diagnosis just to instill some good amount of confidence in freshers, and also to update people who are already practicing it. So what is the uniqueness of iris diagnosis? Most of us, when we are using iris diagnosis, what do? We look at a specific region in the iris and we say there is a problem in the lungs region, there is a problem in the liver region, and that's it. We finish it at that. Or we say that there is a combination of problem between 1, 2, 3 organs, and we finish it at that place. But iris diagnosis just doesn't stop there. It has got more information to it. What is that information it possesses in it? If you would examine the iris, you will be able to literally say where the problem started and how all it progressed. And even in a person who is literally healthy as of now, we will be able to say which condition he will be predisposed to, or which organ is lacking in, or having less, or is not functioning properly, or which organ is which organ is likely to be impaired in the near future. So according to that, we will be able to design our treatment strategies. So it is very important for us to kind of strengthen our diagnostic strategies, especially iris diagnosis. So if you would combine these principles of iris diagnosis with the Panchakosha theory, we will be able to see good amount of similarity. Just to give you an example, we say Adija Vyadhi. So what is Adija Vyadhi? The root cause of any non-communicable disease mostly lies in the mental plane. So any disturbance there, or any problem in the any disturbance in the mental plane, it impacts upon the Pranamaya Kosha, and which later on manifests as a pathology in the Annamaya Kosha, purely based upon an individual's nutritional status, his inherent genetic makeup, the environment in which he lives in, his lifestyle. All these parameters plays a vital role in determining which are going to get affected, and all this is impacted upon by the Manomaya Kosha. So how much do we rely upon this? We have been hearing this right from the first year of our college days, right? So many of you would have been bored with this statement that I'm making. But is there any scientific basis to what? If you would ask, there is one concept that we all need to know. It is called as perseverative cognition. Perseverative cognition. So what is this perseverance? So perseverance in English, if you see, it is always looked at with a connotation of positivity, where we kind of persevere, where we kind of pursue a thing continuously without any kind of delay, right? So it appears something to be very positive, but in psychology, it is not positive. So what is perseverative cognition? It is nothing but anticipatory worry or repetitive negative thinking or rumination. Most of the times, we as students or even as elders, especially when age increases, what happens? People tend to develop this perseverative cognition or rumination, where we have this tendency to inherently think about something which might happen bad in the near future. What if something happens like this? What if I contract COVID-19? What if I lost my job? What if my financial status is not going to be good? What if something is going to happen bad? So most of the time, even though we are healthy, even though we do not have any pathology as of now, even though we are staying at home as relatively safely from COVID, some or the other way, somehow or the other, at least a couple of times in a day, we tend to have this ruminative thoughts. So what happens when an individual is having this rumination? Or if you see, I would like to make a claim here. I'm just deviating from the topic. I'll come back here shortly. Yoga and naturopathy are the most evolution friendly systems of medicine. So why? Once again, coming back to perseverative cognition. So what happens when an individual is having repetitive negative thoughts? It is going to trigger your sympathetic tone. So the problem here with your body in the due course of evolution is that the brain simply cannot differentiate between a physical stressor and a psychological stressor. Very simple. Even if a dog is chasing you continuously, or if person is coming to beat you and hit you badly, or even if you're going to sit in your room, sit in your couch thinking about an emotionally disturbing incident, all of this are going to produce a similar physiological response inside your body. Your heart rate is going to increase, your respiratory rate is going to increase, your blood pressure is going to transiently increase, your blood glucose levels are going to transiently increase, your pro-inflammatory cytokines are going to be released. All this is going to happen for sure. It's all same. It is, we call it as an evolutionary disconnect, wherein your brain cannot simply differentiate between your psychological stressor and your physiological stressor. As simple as that. So now, if you're not giving sufficient time for your body to relax itself and return back to its homeostatic zone, what is going to happen? And if you're continuously keeping your body mind stressed, so there is an elevated or a new normal which is being established. So after a certain period of time, your body somehow understands, putting it in physiological term, your body accommodates to this new normal and establishes itself in that new normal. That new normal can be manifested as an elevated blood pressure or hyperglycemia or hyperinsulinemia or obesity. It all depends upon an individual's inherent genetic makeup. So there is good amount of evidence which is being generated where there is a huge amount of stress being emphasized on this mental health. So coming to mental health specifically, if you look into the research papers, most of the research papers do not differentiate between acute stress and chronic stress. That is an inherent problem in our understanding of stress biology completely. So we as naturopathy and yoga community, we have access, or people with NCDs mostly approaches for lifestyle modifications, right? Of course, we do treat lots of painful pain management as well. But speaking from the perspective of NCDs, mental health, mind management is very, very important. So this is one key area that we need to have our focus on when we are dealing with our patients. So how much of impact is this perseverative cognition going to have over our clinical practice and over the results that we're going to give after an intervention. We did a study at SVSA Bangalore a couple of years ago, wherein in the hospital, we used to see approximately 60 to 80% of the cases getting better. And whereas this remaining 20 to 30% of people will be getting better, but not as better as that 70 to 80% of people. So, but the treatment has been the same, the care has been the same, but what makes this difference? What is responsible for this difference in the benefit that we are going to get? We thought this perseverative cognition would be playing the role as of a moderator, right? So, and indeed it was working like that. So those people who had more amount of perseverative cognition, they had greater symptoms, and those people who were able to decrease their perseverative cognition had better improvement in their health status. So this perseverative cognition acts as an independent determinant of your clinical outcomes following your intervention. So whenever you are treating a patient with bronchial asthma or hypertension or diabetes, please ensure that this mental health component is also addressed. So how do we do that? What are the strategies that we can use? We will speak about it a little later. And we did one more study on understanding, how much of an impact is it going to have over the respiratory system? Why was this question asked? Basically, because we always say in yoga practices, pranayama, we say that chale vate chalam chittam nischale nischalam bhavet. So whenever your breath moves, then alone your mind moves. So if your breathing is having such a huge control over your mind, and if your mind is going to have such an intense control over your breath, so there has to be some manifestation over the respiratory system when an individual is persistently stressed. So this was the idea which took us to that project. So what we did, we simply had a cohort of people on whom we assessed their perseverative cognition levels using a questionnaire. We did some spirometry assessments, and we categorized them into according to their stressful levels, and we saw how much of an impact is it going to have over the respiratory system. And what we saw was that those people who were having more of perseverative cognition, they had their FEV1 values. FEV is forced expiratory volume in the first second, which simply means there is a protocol where we ask the patient to blow out the air after complete inhalation as fast as possible. And if an individual is able to blow out more than 90 to 95% of inhaled air in the first second, so his airway patency is considered to be very, very good. So in people who were having a greater amount of perseverative cognition, what we saw was that their FEV1 values were lower. And we gave them an intervention, and we saw this got completely reversed. Interesting, isn't it? So, but all these values were in the normal range. It doesn't mean if I'm having more of perseverative cognition, I'm going to have some kind of restrictive pattern or restricted breathing or restricted So what is important, or what we need to know, is that even in a healthy individual, even though he is not having any specific symptom or a disease, having greater amount of perseverative cognition will be having an impact over the lung functions. So this is one way how yoga practices work. So if you're able to simply slow down your breathing, if you're able to increase or enhance your maximum voluntary ventilation, your FEV, and if you're able to decrease the expiratory residual volume inside the lungs, it basically means you're able to enhance your lung capacities. All these have been made possible with yoga practices. So especially Vamandauti and all these pranayama practices have shown to be beneficial with this. So this is one of the ways how yoga practices work. And speaking about the present scenario, COVID-19, today there was a report out in the morning wherein the study was conducted over all the college going students, over the college students, trying to understand their anxiety levels and how they are able to cope up with this virtual classrooms and the changes in the way how they are learning. And surprisingly, of course, it's not surprising, but most of them are observed to be presenting with symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder. And even in the clinic, we see patients who are having symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder and generalized anxiety disorder simply because of fear for this COVID-19. So literally, I have seen a patient who said that his throat was choking whenever he was hearing this news of this COVID-19. The cases getting more and more in our locality, and this person was literally trembling, and his blood pressure was higher. He was not able to breathe, and people had to kind of do a test on him to see if he's having COVID-19, right? So, but fortunately, he was not having that, and later on consultation, he presented this with these symptoms, and we were able to relieve it completely only with acupuncture. We saw 70 to 80% of improvement just with a single session of acupuncture. And thanks to Dr. Bhargav, he has been doing an amazing service to our naturopathy community, where he has been sharing his knowledge and expertise on acupuncture. Say, if possible, sometimes all of you can communicate with him or communicate with people who are there. I also see some of the participants who are also part of that group, whom Dr. Bhargav is sharing his experience. So that acupuncture strategies are kind of very, very beneficial in dealing with these mental health problems. And one another area which we can pitch in efficiently, effectively with the mental health scenario is using diet therapy. So similar to what the previous speaker, Dr. Naveen sir, had mentioned. So intermittent fasting has been proven to be very beneficial in treating mood disorders, and it is also shown to kind of increase the GABA levels in the brain. So if you are able to enhance your GABA levels, naturally we will be able to kind of feel good, and dopamine levels also are regulated. So we will be having a better mood regulation, better state of mind, and better mental health. Not just that, a simple treatment which we also advise for the COVID patients, and which we most of the times we do not kind of give so much importance to that, but it is sun bath, right? Exposing ourselves to sunlight. So we generally say expose yourself to sunlight for 10 or 15 minutes. What does it do? Just with 10 to 15 minutes of exposure just to your face and your upper arms, your body will be able to synthesize up to 90 to 95% of the vitamin D that it needs for that particular day. So unfortunately, most of the times we are staying inside the house, and thanks to this lockdown, we do not expose ourselves to sunlight at all. So why is exposing ourselves to sunlight very important? So exposing ourselves to sunlight increases or promotes release of serotonin. So serotonin, we know, is a feel-good hormone. So exposing ourselves to sunlight is a very good intervention strategy. And speaking about vitamin D, there is something very, very interesting. Almost 100% of the patients who are ending up or landing up in ICU with COVID-19 are vitamin D deficient. Interesting, isn't it? So almost 100% of the people who are landing up in ICU with COVID-19 are vitamin D deficient. So what is the role of vitamin D here? We know vitamin D has got immunomodulatory properties, first thing. Second thing, it also acts as an anticoagulant. So in COVID-19, in this novel coronavirus infection, what we see is that there are two problems, or two major issues that we have. The first thing is asymptomatic hypoxia, which is not widely spoken. Clinically, if you see, suddenly a person, he will not be having any symptoms, maybe very minimal, mild symptoms like sore throat, maybe mild fever, nothing more than that. All of a sudden, he will be developing respiratory distress, and he collapses. Why does it happen? There is copious secretion that is happening, that happens in, and copious secretion and accumulation of this secretion at the alveolar membrane, which kind of suddenly disrupts this transfer, gas exchange that is happening. So it lands up as respiratory distress. So exposing oneself to sunlight safely for 10 to 15 minutes, maintaining social distance and everything will be beneficial for better immunomodulatory functions. Yes, and apart from that, practicing this simple breathing techniques like Nadishuddhi Pranayama, slow breathing and sectional breathing, Nadanusandhana practices, they kind of promote salivary secretions. And in this in the saliva which is secreted after these practices, they are known to contain more of antimicrobial agents, especially beta defensins. So beta defensins act as first line of antimicrobial agents which kind of help in regulating the immunity and neutralizing the invading pathogen. So apart from that, one another scenario that we are going to face in the near future, once this COVID-19 crisis is over, will be mental health issues. So we as yoga naturopathy community should be geared up and should be having ourselves prepared to deal with huge number of patients suffering from mental health problems. Of course, people will be depressed. Of course, people may be having showing signs of anxiety, and there will be lots of cases who will be presenting themselves with insomnia. So these kind of cases we can expect in the near future once when this COVID is kind of taken care of. So we should be equipping ourselves to handle this crisis very efficiently. So I would like to share one last thing. We did a study mimicking, trying to understand how yoga might be beneficial in extreme states of environment where people will be isolated completely from the outside world. Of course, most of us are living like that as of now, but before a couple of years, getting ourselves locked in Antarctica in extreme environmental condition was literally a challenge, where people used to develop so much of aggression, and people also had the tendency to become depressed. They tend to develop addiction. All these behavioral issues were seen, right? So we had administered yoga as an intervention in such challenging environmental conditions, and what we saw was that yoga was able to kind of significantly decrease the extent of perseverative cognition, their stress perception levels, and also it was able to promote their sleep quality. Most of the times, if you are able to make a stressed individual to sleep nicely, he should be feeling better, right? So yoga practices, acupuncture practices, dietary regimen, even hydrotherapy treatments, all of them should be integrated effectively to kind of safely promote mental health. And no other system, I can confidently bet that no other system can do a better role in handling mental health crisis than our yoga naturopathy community. So we as a community should be prepared to address this issue in the near future. And I with this maybe we will have some questions, and maybe we can take some questions and we can discuss. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Pranam sir. Sir, I am Janvi Mishra from Varanasi.
Yeah.
Sir,
Yes.
I'm going to start my YouTube channel, and my that will be my first video there. And I'm going to explain people about the how to handle COVID-19 by using yoga and naturopathy treatment. Sir, you have told me lots of things about, but I want to know something more about that. Pregnant ladies, those who are pregnant in this situation, how they can cope up with this situation if they are positive, COVID-19 positive.
Yep. So the first thing is, if they are COVID positive, there are regular protocols. There are protocols which are established in the government sector. The first thing is, most of the anybody who is pregnant, they are routinely checked for COVID-19. Basically, in all the government hospitals, whenever they're going for their routine examination, they are being checked. They are being investigated if they have this infection. And the second thing, if they show any symptoms, without any delay, without any hesitation, they have to undertake treatments. Along with the treatments, what we can do is that we can administer natural immune boosting herbs basically. What all can be administered? We can administer dry ginger, we can administer garlic, basil, tulsi can be
Yes,
administered.
sir.
We can administer licorice. All these can be made into a good decoction and can be administered very safely. First thing. Second thing is we can generally, apart from that, whenever at home, I mean, in their regular diet, they can have good amount of proteins, right? So that will also be beneficial. So having a rich source of vitamin C, amla, that also would be beneficial. So, and if they are having any symptoms, of course, when they go to hospitals, at least in Tamil Nadu government sector, we have been able to integrate yoga and naturopathy very effectively into all the COVID care centers. Almost all the patients who are diagnosed with COVID-19 are being administered with these decoctions, and they are administered with this facial steam using some aromatic oils like basil oil, eucalyptus oil, camphor oil. These are all used, these aromatic oils are used with facial steam, and that has been proven to be shown to be very beneficial. So these can be safely integrated. And pranayama practices. So pranayama practices, slow breathing, Nadi Shuddhi pranayama, Bhramari pranayama, they are also very beneficial. We can safely advise for all the patients who are diagnosed with COVID. These asymptomatic cases and mild cases, they can practice this without any risk. And if in case a person is having a breathing difficulty, they can listen to Yoga Nidra. In fact, this session was conducted in a hospital in Chennai by a team of doctors from Government Yoga Naturopathy Medical College, and they were able to see very good results. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Any other
Hello, sir.
questions?
Hello, sir.
Yes, madam.
Sir, actually, I've been thinking about this a lot. Sir, in naturopathy system of medicine, we don't believe in foreign matter theory or germ matter theory, na, sir. So in this time, like the COVID-19 time, in which type of disease do
How do
we
we apply
place
this
this
theory?
COVID-19?
So here also, the one thing that even scientific papers speak is that if your immunity is good, we will be able to keep this infection at bay. So when does this problem arise? So if our immunity is low, if our vitality is, speaking in naturopathic terms, if our vitality is low, what is going to happen? This virus will be replicating, and it will be inducing cytokine storm. So once this cytokine storm is induced, that is when the problem happens. So if you are able to have your immunity good, if your vitality is good, you should be able to keep yourself safe and healthy. So how do we define if my vitality is good? Biochemically, we do not have an answer as of now.
Thank you, sir.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. No, sir.
No?
Yes.
Okay, what do you want to know exactly?
Like, sir, nowadays the protocols are being like, they are telling to improve the immunity or something to make ourselves strong. But I guess like we can't explain ourselves properly in this situation, being naturopaths.
I don't think so. Because most of the protocols that speak, or okay, you can take the example of the treatment regimen that is being administered in a modern medical facility. So what is being given? They are being administered with protein-rich diet. They are being administered with vitamin C-rich fruits. They are being administered with good amount of water, hydration. These are the three basic things that are being done. And only in patients who are having some symptoms, they are administered with antiviral drugs. and other patients, they are being administered with antipyretics. This is the commonest protocol that is being followed. And in patients who are having some symptoms, some of them are administered with some steroids. So that is one. So, but where do you think we are not able to explain ourselves properly? I'm just trying to help you out.
So that is what the basic, I went to the basic, like we study now, sir. The root cause of disease is accumulation of morbid matter and those things. So I was just thinking,
Yes.
we don't
So
believe in
you
foreign
have
matter
to think
theory.
at it. Okay. So here also you need to look at it from this perspective. It is the same theory which says unless and until there is a fertile soil, a soil which is having good amount of toxins that is accumulated, then only there will be a germ which can multiply there, right? So that is where your vitality comes into picture. If your vitality is good, the germ is not going to, the germ will be efficiently neutralized. As simple as that.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Or we can conclude the session.
Sir, this is Azuma from Coimbatore. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, madam, please.
So it has been a good session, sir. Thank you so much for bridging the missing links. And I would like to, request a platform where we can connect to your writings or your thoughts, something like a blog or something, so that you can recommend us on the ones to read, like the texts to read, especially in naturopathy, because the philosophies are basically in text. So
okay, I will definitely do that. But as of now, I'm a person who is kind of very weak in social media, which I'm not into. I'm into social media, but not very active in social media. But I will definitely take this point, and I will do that. And once I start it, I will definitely circulate it. Thank you. I will do that. Yeah.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So one question is there in the chat box from the Council Sharma. If a person, so you can read also, sir.
Yeah. If someone falls ill first day, then what should they do to boost up their immunity? So on diagnosis, in almost 80% of cases are symptomatic. So what they need to do, first thing, they have to follow the recommendations that are being administered, social distancing, staying in a quarantine, all those things we need to follow. And apart from that, to boost the immunity, what can having proper hydration, right? First thing. Second thing, having good protein-rich food. We do not advocate fasting at this point of time for lack of evidence. We are advocating an individual to consume good amount of protein-rich food and vitamin C-rich food, and having a decoction of these herbs: ginger, licorice, basil, then turmeric. What else? Pepper. So these 5 ingredients can safely be made as a decoction and can be consumed. It has been shown to be very, very beneficial. There are feedbacks from the patients mentioning that after taking this decoction twice a day, they are able to have better reduction in their symptoms with respect to sore throat, fatigue, and fever. Right. So not all patients need medication right away. So especially high-risk people, they will not be put into medication. So to boost their immunity, in general, we can advocate, or we can take this decoction on a regular basis. Apart from that, this amla juice would be very, very beneficial. So along with that, pranayama practices. So pranayama practices are really, really beneficial, especially Kapalabhati. It increases circulating WBCs. immediately after practicing Kapalabhati. So this paper is in under review, so soon we should be able to have it for access. So practicing Kapalabhati immediately increases the circulating WBCs. So one can safely practice Kapalabhati right away, or all the way, even when he is healthy. Why wait till getting diagnosed or infect? And Nadi Shuddhi Pranayama, Bhramari, these practices also help. These should be sufficient. And having good amount of vitamin D through proper exposure to sunlight, having drumstick leaves, spinach, all these are rich source of vitamin D. And even millets, they are also rich source of calcium. So that they can be used effectively. Any more questions?
So no any other questions. One Dr. Sharbino raised her hand, but she didn't ask anyone. So any questions is there? This last questions, anyone is there?
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening, madam.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, please, madam.
So, how do we explain the concept of in cases of genetical disorders, like for example, myasthenia gravis, or in patients who have absorption problem since their birth, whatever they eat, good nutrition, if they have a problem since their birth for proper absorption, or in cases like myasthenia gravis, SLE, in such diseases, how do we explain the cause of the disease according to the naturopathy, sir?
Especially with ADHD kind of disorders, it is largely linked with the nutrition and the mental health status of the mother. So the first thing is maintaining a better gut health, right? So we in naturopathy always say colon hygiene is the best hygiene, and the health starts with the gut. And even the recent day scientific evidences do accept to that. We know that this gut lymphoid tissue houses around 70% of the immune system cells, basically. So in individuals who are having constipation, there are studies which say that there will be elevated CD3, CD4, CD8 counts, which are indicators of pro-inflammatory cytokine, increased pro-inflammatory cytokines in the circulation. So if you are able to relieve constipation, these pro-inflammatory cytokines and this elevated CD3, CD4, CD8 cell counts also kind of decrease. All this happens just by relieving constipation. So not just that, having a healthy gut, having a healthy gut microbiota also plays a very vital role in learning, in memory, in also replenishing the gut microbiota is known to play a vital role in treating learning disorders as well. So in these conditions, we can safely, if we are able to advocate better gut health for the mother, we should be able to kind of minimize the risk that the fetus is going to have.
So we will conclude the session, sir. And it was a very wonderful session from 6:05 to 6:45. I didn't see the timing just now. I saw the time. It was a very wonderful session. If you see through research, through mental health side, and as I was your student, sir, I know how it goes from starting. Thank you so much, sir, to come on this virtual platform to explain your knowledge to all of us. Sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhavesh. Thank you for organizing this wonderful session. Thank you.
So everyone will end the session. If any, the last question from Vandana Sharma, sir, if you can answer that.
Yeah, what are the jobs BNOS graduate can serve in the defense sector? So one thing that we as of now, we do not, as far as the information that I have, we do not have any direct openings into the defense sector as naturopathy physicians. The one thing that we can do is like writing examinations of defense services, and we can enter inside service. But as yoga naturopathic physicians inside defense sector, we do not have any openings, I believe, with respect to the information that I have. Yes. We have one person, one Dr. Uday Krishnan, who was a graduate of JSS INYS, who was serving the Indian Army, but not as a yoga naturopathic physician, but he entered inside the defense services through military services examination. So yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for allowing us to have shared with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Conclude the session.